For over 100 years, Iowa State University Extension and Outreach has been serving Iowans. As our state recovers from COVID-19, we will continue to deliver information and education based on research to help you care for your family, manage stress, and support your community, your business, and your farm. We're here for you now, and we will be for the next 100 years. Together, we will build a strong Iowa.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tips from an Expert. We are with you today. Is it Tuesday? It is Tuesday, I believe. And this Tips from an Expert is kicking off early in May as we move into Mental Health Awareness Month. So we have two extension specialists with us today. I'm really excited to hear from them. We've already laughed a little bit as we've just prepped for this. So maybe a few more laughs today. Just get some new information, resources available as we keep mental health and mental health awareness at the top of all of our minds. So I'm going to bring on Demi first. Hey, Demi.
Hello.
Welcome to your inaugural Tips from an Expert, joining me on Facebook.
Thank you so much.
Are you enjoying your day so far? I think it's Tuesday. I haven't quite decided if I'm right or not.
It is Tuesday.
Okay.
It feels like a Monday, but it's a Tuesday.
I know.
Yeah,
well,
it's a good one.
I actually thought maybe it was Wednesday, so now I've got to go backwards. I'm trying so hard to not make like a May the 4th reference, but I have to. Like, I think you have to make May the 4th be with you type, But I'm just playing in. I just can't not. All right, let's bring Andrea on as well, another specialist joining us. Hi, Andrea.
Hello. Thanks for having me on.
I'm so excited to have you. Like I mentioned, we've already done some laughing, so I feel I'm mentally prepped now for more mental health awareness information. So it's kind of a topic that can feel a little heavy, a little even. I think there's certain times that you just aren't sure you're supposed to talk about it, right? But we're here today to tell you that is just not the case. We think awareness is key, and I'm so excited to learn from both of you and hear all the great resources, ways that Extension and Outreach is reaching others with mental health resources, and ultimately just that awareness component is huge. So I'm going to pop off. I'm going to let you guys drive this bus, and I will be adding information to the comment section, links to resources or things that you guys are referencing. But those of you that are watching, we want this to be interactive. So go to your own comments, add questions, or if something that either Andrea or Demi shares really stuck out to you and it's just something like, wow, that was really impactful, throw that in the comments as well. If you're watching this later when the live is over, do the same. Interact with us. We want to hear from you. We want to answer your questions and meet you guys where you're at. All right, let's hear a little bit more about Mental Health Awareness Month.
Okay, I'm never sure who decides it's a good idea to leave me in charge of things, but we're gonna we're gonna do our best. My name's Andrea Gustafson. Obviously, I do work for Extension and Outreach as part of the COVID Recovery Iowa team. I have only been working for Extension since last May, so it's been just under a year that I started with Extension. I do work with them part-time. And my other job is working as a mental health therapist in private practice. I am a licensed social worker through the state of Iowa. So that, I guess, is what qualifies to make me an expert for today. So that's a little bit about me and what I do.
I'm so happy you're on today, Andrea. My name is Demi Johnson. I'm our behavioral health program coordinator, really. It's a specialist by title, coordinator by position. I'm the person in the background of most of our mental health programming across the state through Iowa State University Extension and Outreach, making sure that those programs exist in the communities across Iowa and that staff are trained and ready to present them, and that all of our calendars are updated and ready to go.
So we are going to talk a little bit about burnout and just making sure that we're all taking care of ourselves, which is a huge piece of mental health and mental health awareness. We are definitely in a season of the year when burnout can be very prevalent. Farmers are getting into the fields and trying to plant, or maybe they're stressing out because they can't plant for some reason. I don't have a lot of farming background, but I hear we haven't gotten enough rain this year, so I'm sure that's causing some stress for people. We're getting to the end of the school year, and I know from the clients I see at my practice, like whether you're a teacher or student, you know, we're winding down and everybody's just itching for summer. And particularly this year with COVID and the way school has looked different, people are just tired and exhausted. Graduations, which, you know, burnout can be caused with stress related to things that are happy. Graduations are awesome, like celebrating graduations, moving on to the next step, but that comes with ceremonies and parties and getting together with family and,
Cleaning
you know,
out
that
your garage.
cleaning out your garage so that you can have the party. Like there's just a laundry list of things that come with that. Spring, I am a huge baseball fan, so summer sports are my jam. I don't have any children that play. I don't have any children, period, but I know that summer sports schedules, summer activities, all of that just starts to bring up stress and shuffling of schedules. In addition to that, we are still very much in a pandemic. Things are starting to shift a little bit as the vaccination gets out there, but that is still very much a stressor on people's minds. And all of these things can contribute to burnout, which is just, you know, we want to catch that as soon as possible and take care of it before it gets worse. So if we look at burnout or stress, it sort of hits us in all areas. So if we look at sort of the physical toll stress takes on us, sometimes you may get headaches or muscle aches, or, you know, like that tension in your neck and your shoulders, changes in appetite. Some people get super stressed out and just stop eating altogether. Some people are like stressed out and they're like, I'll eat everything with sugar that's in front of my face. Thank you very much. Change in sleep habits, not being able to sleep or sleeping too much, or just in general, not feeling very good, feeling tired. I know that in my younger years, when I was not as good at listening to my body and the signs that it was time for me to take a break, I would push and push and push and keep working until eventually my body was like, okay, you're not going to take a break, so we're going to make you take a break. And inevitably I would get an ear infection or a cold or strep throat or some other crazy thing that meant I had to take a break. I had to give my body some rest. Behaviorally, you may be noticing that you feel like you forget things a lot and you can't find things, or you are having trouble concentrating at work, or you're putting off making decisions. You may increase the amount of drugs and alcohol you're using. Maybe you used to drink once in a while and now you find yourself drinking every week to kind of reduce the stress and alleviate some of the tension you're feeling. Those can all be behavioral things. You're just not feeling productive, or oddly, despite maybe feeling very busy and stressed out, you find yourself feeling bored a lot. That can be a sign that you're struggling with some major stress or overwhelming stress. Sometimes, I know this is true for me, and I don't know about the rest of the people, Demi on with us today, or other people but I know when I'm stressed out and bordering on burnout, I get my temper like shortens. My patience for people shortens. I get super irritable and just kind of grumpy, which, if you think about it, as somebody who works in mental health, that's not really a great, like, you don't really want to go to your therapist and find out that she's grumpy and irritable with you. Like, that's not what most people are looking for. So that's usually a sign of, you know, you've got some stress going on, or maybe you get hyperactive. Maybe you get super like, I've got all these things to do, and you just try and stay busy, keep yourself going. And even in your relationships with others, you may be intolerant or frustrated with people that normally you love and enjoy. You may get resentful. You may experience a drop in your sex drive, which obviously can take a toll on partner relationships. These are just some quick examples of how stress affects us in sort of every realm of our life. Like eventually stress will infiltrate all areas of our life if we don't attune to it and make sure that we're taking care of ourselves.
And Andrea, what I like about that last list that was just up is that some of those things we might notice in ourselves and others we might notice in other people and be able to have that conversation with them about what might be happening in their life, as well as, you know, when we see it in ourselves. So this is kind of a two-way street as we think about helping both ourselves and our friends, family, and community members recognize when we are experiencing too much stress and maybe need to take care of ourselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So how do we keep ourselves mentally healthy? How do we stave off some of that stress and burnout? There are lots of different ways to do that. These are sort of the top 5 that I recommend to most of my clients because they're effective, they're quick, not always easy, but they are effective and quick if you need something in your back pocket. Breathing techniques are a huge one. I know a lot of times when we're worked up about something or we're having anxiety about something, maybe somebody with very good intentions comes to us and says, just breathe. And if you're anything like me, you just want to punch them for saying that because that, like, in the moment, that doesn't feel good. The reality is, though, there is science to back up that breathing actually helps and actually calms us down. Our anxiety, when we get worked up like that, it's our fight or flight response being triggered. And forcing yourself to take a deep breath actually counteracts that fight or flight response. And so that's why we encourage people to breathe. That's why we encourage breathing techniques. You're on a very physiological level, on a physical level, combating that stress and anxiety. The one other thing I will say about breathing techniques is that you want to make sure that you're taking deep breaths properly. It's very easy to give people lots of here, do square breathing or this pattern or this, that, or the other thing. But if you're not breathing into your core properly, it won't be as effective. So what I usually tell people is when you take a deep breath, there should be more movement in your stomach than there is in your chest. So when you take that deep breath in, you should feel your stomach sort of push out. And then when you exhale, it goes back in. If you find that when you're taking a deep breath, there's a lot of this happening in your shoulders and in your chest, you're not breathing in a way that's going to help you calm down or that's triggering that anti fight or flight response. So just keep that in mind. Also, when you are going to take a deep breath or do some breathing techniques, exercise is also a good one. It's another one that when you say it to people, they're like, I don't want to exercise, which I get it. I don't want to exercise either. And I think a lot of times when we think of exercise, people think oh, I got to go to the gym. I got to take a class. That's really that's great. If you like going to the gym and you like taking classes, by all means, knock yourself out, go to town, have fun. If that's not your jam, though, there are other ways to exercise to move your body in a way that will help you alleviate some stress. Simple things like going for a walk. You don't even have to walk that briskly or that quickly. Just getting outside, going for a walk, moving your body is going to help you overall mentally. Yoga is another good one. If you're into that sort of mind-body connection and looking for something that maybe is lower intensity, yoga is also a good choice. So just make sure you're moving your body and doing something other than, I know I'm guilty of, I work a job where I sit all day and my job is mentally exhausting and emotionally exhausting. And so I have a tendency to go home after work and then just sit on the couch and stare at the TV because I'm exhausted. The problem is my body is not getting any movement and it's not tired. So my brain's tired. My body's like, let's go. We've got energy to burn still. So that can help a lot. Setting boundaries. This is a difficult one for a lot of people. It has been a difficult one for me throughout my life to set boundaries with people, to know your limits and to say no. In an interesting twist of whatever, I'm actually on vacation this week, staycation. I wasn't planning on going anywhere, but I just needed a break and was taking some time off. And so it's a long story that I won't bore you with as to how I ended up working today, but I feel okay with it. I'm not upset about it. But over the course of my vacation, I've had to really think about, where is the balance between I want to be out doing things with friends or I want to do social activities, but I also took this vacation because I need a break. So I need time at home, just me and the cat doing our thing. So finding that balance of, okay, I've got this many activities on my schedule for a week. That's it. If anybody else asks me, it's a no. My schedule is full, even though it's not technically full. So setting those boundaries and how much of yourself you give to other people. This may not even be a time thing. This may also be how much energy you're willing to give to a relationship. We all have a variety of relationships in our life, and they're in varying degrees of closeness. That's normal and healthy, and that's how it should be. And so there may be people that at times you just don't have as much energy to give them for one reason or another, and that's okay. And setting that boundary around that, and not answering text messages right away or not returning phone calls right away. It's okay to do those things. There's, I'm of an age where I still remember a time when we didn't have our phones attached to our hips at all times. It was still attached to the wall in the house. So if you weren't home, you couldn't get phone calls. And that was okay. We all survived, right? We had answering machines, or you just didn't, if nobody was home, nobody was home. It's okay to set those boundaries and not answer that phone or answer those text messages all
Andrea?
the time. Yeah.
We have a comment in the chat box that says, how do you say no? Which is a great question. And if you don't have an answer to this, I can think of some.
So no can look a lot of different ways. There's nothing wrong with just a flat out, no, I don't want to do that, or no, I'm not able to do that. I know that makes people uncomfortable. I know that is hard for people. So I will sometimes just tell people that, hey, maybe it's I can't do that this week. I would be happy to help you with that, but I can't do that this week. Can I do that? And then you set a time in your schedule that works for you. So talking about my vacation, I had a friend who said, hey, do you want to get together for lunch or dinner this week? And I'm at capacity for what I'm willing to commit to this week. And I just responded and I said, hey, this week doesn't work for me, but how about, and then I suggested a couple of dates in the future. And we were able to work something out that way. A lot of it, how you say no, has a lot to do with your comfort level and your style and just kind of how you do things. I personally have no problem not answering a phone call and calling them back when I feel like I have the energy to do so. I understand for some people that's anxiety provoking. So maybe for you, you don't answer the phone and you just send them a quick text that says, hey, I'm busy. Can I call you back tomorrow, later, whatever that looks like for you. And I know, particularly when it comes to maybe you don't have anything on the schedule outside of I just want to sit home and relax. I've met a lot of people who are like, but I don't really have anything on the schedule. And I'm like, but you absolutely do. Scheduling time for you to recharge and take care of yourself absolutely should be on your calendar, and absolutely is not something that you get whenever you can. It needs to be a priority. So telling somebody I'm busy and I can't do that right now is, even if all you're doing is sitting at home watching your favorite Netflix show, that's not a lie. You're busy taking care of yourself and you can't attend to whatever they're asking for right now.
I think that's a great way to say that. But I think the same thing is we don't always have to give an excuse or a reason.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think minimalism is like a popular idea right now, and that can apply to your schedule too. And so white space is fine on the calendar, and the words like, I'm just taking some time for myself right now is perfectly fine to say. Like, that's not mean, that's not bad. We can say that.
It's not. And I think the hard part for people, and even for me, is that I get to say those things and I'm not responsible for the other person's reaction. You're gonna have people in your life that don't like when you set a boundary. And it's probably because they're not used to you setting boundaries. So when you start to do it, you might get some pushback from people, but that's not your responsibility to smooth that over. You're setting a boundary to take care of yourself, and how they feel about it is something they need to deal with appropriately, and not come back and try and make you feel guilty or any of those things. So, breaking tasks, breaking things. Sorry, I'm so distracted by things that pop up on the screen. I apologize. Welcome to my brain.
Those tasks into smaller goals. So like
Thank you.
Days I get out of bed and I'm like, oh, those dishes. There's 1,000 of them, and I think I'm just going to burn the house down and start fresh.
Yeah.
How do I get past that feeling, Andrea?
Well, it's okay. So doing all the dishes obviously feels overwhelming if you're fighting the urge to burn your house down, to just start over. So I would recommend, what can you start with? Can we break that into smaller pieces? Can you set a timer and say, I'm going to do dishes I'm going to see how much I can get done in 10 minutes. At the end of 10 minutes, I can take a break. I can keep going. We'll figure out what I'm going to do at the end of 10 minutes when we get to the end of 10 minutes, or 5 minutes, or 1 minute, whatever chunk of time feels manageable to you. Another way to maybe break down something like that is, can you break the task down into, like, I have a dishwasher at home. I know not everybody has such a lovely appliance in their house, but for me, sometimes it's like, okay, I'm just going to unload the dishwasher. Like, once I unload the dishwasher, then if I want to be done, I want to be done. And if I have the energy to keep going, I will keep going, and then maybe work on loading the dishwasher. And then, as always happens in my house, we save the pots and pans till whenever you need a pot or pan, quite frankly, sometimes, but those always end up getting shoved to last. So how can I break down these things that feel overwhelming into something that feels manageable? You can do the same type of thing with laundry. You can do the same type of thing with cleaning the house, with, getting the groceries, what feels manageable. So going to the grocery store and buying all the groceries feels absolutely overwhelming. Okay, so start by making the list. Make a list of what your, groceries you need, et cetera, et cetera. And I've told you, particularly with just how busy people are in general, but also with like the pandemic times we're living in, there is no shame in ordering those groceries for pickup, and there is no shame in having those groceries delivered to your front door. If that's what makes getting groceries feel manageable for you, absolutely you should take advantage of the services that have come out of the pandemic. Sometimes I feel like grocery shopping. Sometimes I go and pick them up, and sometimes I have them brought to my house. It just depends on the week and how I'm feeling and what's going on. So anything you can think of, any task, I do this with clients who are struggling with depression for things like taking a shower or getting out of bed or getting dressed. You can take any task that you feel like you need to accomplish or that you do need to accomplish and break it break it into pieces that feel manageable, and you keep breaking it down until you get to pieces that feel manageable. I don't care how small they are. I don't care how silly your brain is telling you that it is that you have to break it down this small. You keep breaking that down until you get to a piece that feels manageable and like you can take it on and accomplish it. That takes away some of that overwhelming, because we're not focused on, I need to do all the laundry and wash it and dry it and fold it and put it away. Right now, we're just focusing on, I'm going to sort the laundry into different loads or whatever that looks like for you. And then you go from there. And at any time, you can take a break. I have finished this segment. So if I'm too overwhelmed, I can take a break. If I'm not, then I can continue with the next segment. So we feel a lot of invisible pressure to like that,
Do all the things all the time.
that adulting looks a certain way, you know. And the reality is, part of being an adult is that looks however I want it to look, as long as I'm not hurting anybody else and ideally have a place to live, you know, and to pay my bills. But we get to decide what adulting looks like and what works for us. So last on this list, staying informed but not too informed. In the world of 24-hour news sources and endless social media platforms, it is very easy to find yourself completely immersed and inundated with every detail of a news story and getting hit in the face with it over and over and over and over and over again. So we all have to find a balance. We all have to find that balance of, I want to know what's going on, or maybe some days you don't. That's fine too. I want to know what's going on in the world, but I need to know where my limit is. And when you've reached that limit, it's okay to shut the news off. It's okay to put the phone down. It's okay to not be up to date on every like breaking news story that happens. I personally feel like we overuse breaking news story. I'm like, that probably didn't need to be a breaking news story, but you know, and that's a difference for everybody. My threshold lately for news has been pretty low. So I catch the headlines, I read the stories that I want to read, and that's pretty much it. Other people, maybe to feel informed, you need to watch the news every day. Or, you know, that looks different for everybody. You get to decide what that balance is, but being aware of what your limits are and how much information you can consume. So sleep is a huge one. For anybody, again, I don't have kids, but for anybody out there who has children or have been caretaker to children, I have been told that sleep deprivation is real. And the reality is, the science out there will tell you that not only is it real, it's bad. Like, it really messes with our ability to think. It messes with our ability to make decisions. Sleep is important. And everything you look up will say that adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. I don't care if you tell me I'm fine on 5. You're not. Adults need 7 to 8 hours of sleep. So if you're having trouble sleeping, what can you do to make that better? Have some kind of a ritual to go to bed at night. If you think, you know, I think back to when I was a kid and we had a routine, right? It's bedtime. Go to the bathroom, brush your teeth, get a drink, go to bed. Dad read us books. You know, that was our routine every night. That was the signal to our brains. It's time for bed. We're brushing our teeth. We're going to the bathroom. We're getting a drink. Dad's reading us a story, and then it's time to sleep. As we become adults, that tends to go by the wayside. And I know plenty of people who go to bed after they've fallen asleep on the couch or in their chair or whatever, watching TV, and there's really no routine to how they end their day. So implementing some kind of a routine. It doesn't have to be anything major. Mine's pretty simple. I shut the lights off, make sure the doors are locked, go to the bathroom, brush my teeth, climb into bed. It doesn't have to be this like crazy, intricate ritual, just something that happens every night that signals to your brain, hey, we're going to bed now. A lot of research you find and a lot of therapists you talk to will tell you that your bed should be used for two things and two things only: sleeping and sex. If you're doing other things in your bed, your brain is going to associate your bed with whatever it is you're doing. Even things like reading in bed. I know a lot of people read in bed, and I'm not telling you that you can't do that anymore. I'm just telling you what the general consensus is. If you're doing things in bed other than sleeping or sex, your brain's going to associate that with bed. So if you're working, if you're watching TV, if you're reading, your brain will eventually learn, oh, we don't sleep in here. We read in here. We watch TV in here. We do whatever in here. And that can make it harder for you to go to sleep. So again, that nasty E word, exercise, but it's kind of what I talked about earlier. I work a job that's mentally and emotionally exhausting, but it's not physically exhausting. And so while I'm mentally and emotionally tired at the end of the day, sometimes I'm not physically tired, and that can mess with your ability to sleep at night because your physical body is not feeling like it needs rest. So again, doesn't have to be anything crazy. Go for a walk, just move your body in some way, exert some of that energy, and that will help. This one, particularly when I'm on weekends or vacations, I am very guilty of trying not to take long naps. If you're having trouble at sleeping at night and then you're sleeping for 2, 3, 4 hours on your afternoon, shockingly, you're not going to probably sleep very well the next night because you've been sleeping during the day. That can be a really hard one to break the habit of. And that's not to say you can't take a nap if you're tired. I usually try to keep it to an hour or under, just kind of a little refresher for the day if you do that. If you wake up in the middle of the night and can't get back to sleep, or if you've gone to bed and can't fall asleep, you should get out of bed and not necessarily do something, but just get out of bed, go get a drink of water. Don't necessarily turn the TV on because that starts a whole thing. But get up, get a drink of water, use the bathroom, and then go back to bed. That will sometimes, for whatever reason, I don't know the science behind it, but I've done it myself. It works. There's something about if I'm laying in bed, they really say if you've been in bed for about a half an hour to 45 minutes and you can't fall asleep, that you should really get out of bed, because at that point you're not doing anything besides just laying there driving yourself crazy.
And sometimes get out of bed, get a drink of water, and tell myself that I'm going to go exercise, and I suddenly become exhausted.
Suddenly become very tired. And I've had people do that. They have told themselves, if I wake up at 3 a.m. and I can't get back to sleep, I'm going to the gym, because there's tons of gyms anymore that are you can get 24-hour access. Interestingly enough, I don't think any of them has ever actually had to go to the gym because they get tired very quickly at that thought at 3 a.m. Sometimes for me, just getting that drink, doing a lap around the house, and trust me, my house is not that large, is enough to kind of remind my body, like, oh, we're sleeping right now. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And then limit how much alcohol and caffeine you're drinking. I have lots of friends who are like, I have to have my coffee in the morning. I can't get started without my caffeine in the morning. And I'm like, well, I've got some sad news for you. That's because you're having caffeine withdrawal in the mornings. So caffeine is a stimulant, alcohol is a depressant. Obviously, both are going to mess with your ability to sleep. And then you get into that whole, downers to go to bed, uppers to get up in the morning, and that's just not a good situation for anybody. So make sure I'm not telling anybody you can't have your morning coffee. Please don't come for me. But I'm just saying that too much caffeine can interfere with your ability to sleep. So if you find yourself in a time you're like, hey, I think I need some assistance that's more than just me doing some of these self-help things, and you decide to go look for professional assistance, a therapist, finding someone that is a good fit is so important. And I should have looked it up before I got here today, and I didn't. But a significant portion of, in a therapeutic relationship with a therapist, a significant percentage of what helps people get better is the relationship with the therapist. It's not necessarily about the therapist's expertise or skills. Shh, don't tell anybody, that's our secret. But it's the ability to build a relationship with your therapist. So if you go see a therapist and it's not a good fit personality wise, or you don't feel comfortable there for whatever reason, it is 100% okay and absolutely recommended that you look for somebody else. And if you've gone to a good therapist, even if it ends up not being a good fit, that therapist should be more than willing to help you find somebody else that is a good fit for you. That is an important piece of it. It needs to be somebody you're comfortable with. It needs to be somebody that you feel like you can connect with and talk to. There's also considerations about financially. Do they take your insurance? If you don't have insurance, do they offer a sliding fee scale? There are tons and tons and tons of us out there that are therapists. It is possible to find one that's a good fit for you. It just may take a couple of tries. So don't be afraid to see somebody else if the first one, second one, third one you go to isn't a great fit for you. Keep in mind that going to a therapist does not mean that you're broken, damaged, or so screwed up there's no helping you. That is absolutely not the case. I would say the vast majority, I'm talking like 90+% of my caseload, improve immensely and, go on to live very happy lives and don't come to see me anymore. Just because you decide that maybe you need to take medication or maybe it's time to see a therapist does not mean that you are making a decision that is going to last you the rest of your life. Lots and lots of people come to therapy for a while and then discontinue, and lots of people start taking medications for depression or anxiety, and after some time in therapy find that they don't need to be on them anymore. So please understand that recovery is very possible and very, very likely for the vast majority of people. So if it's time to seek professional help, please do that, but understand that that does not mean it's a forever thing. If you want it to be a forever thing, if you want to be in therapy forever, that's cool. There's plenty of therapists out there that'll keep you, but it doesn't have to be if that's something you're concerned about. And if you are talking to a friend or a loved one and they let you know that they are seeking a therapist or seeking mental health resources, obviously be as non-judgmental as you can, be encouraging, be honest about your limits. If you don't know a lot about mental health treatment or don't have a lot of answers, you don't have to, you don't have to. Just listen and don't be judgmental about it.
Andrea, can I jump in here? So I think Leah is sharing Psychology Today, which is a website that we recommend when somebody's searching for a therapist, because unlike searching for a physical therapist or a chiropractor, most people aren't getting on their social media platform and asking all their friends and family for a suggestion.
Right.
So this will help people be able to find what type of education they have, where they are in their community, a little bit about what their interests are in. So you can see, Andrea, I think you do grief and loss counseling. That's your passion.
Yep.
That's what you're good at. Andrea, you're going to be a better therapist for something along that line than maybe substance abuse or military. And I don't actually know about the other portion of your background, but finding somebody whose research and interest area is similar to what you need is also really important.
Absolutely.
I also want to come back to this choice financially part, and I don't mean to hijack your thing, but this is something we talk about a lot in mental health first aid. And I think sometimes when we think, oh man, I have some mental health issues going on, I need to have a therapist, but not all insurance companies cover all different types of therapy. And so if you are paying out of pocket or you don't have an insurance that covers therapy, sometimes talking to your primary care provider or your nurse about what's going on is an option as well. And then also remember that there's a lot of different types of therapists. So you have your psychologists, which are typically your PhD level, psychiatrists, which would be your medical doctors. Andrea is a licensed social worker. There's also peer support specialists in some situations, substance abuse counselors, which are a different level. And then we also even have hotlines that we can call, like the Iowa Concern is one of them we'll talk about a little bit later, COVID Recovery Iowa, and then some of our crisis hotlines as well. So just thinking about this huge, broad range of all different types of who's a good fit and who's an appropriate fit. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'll quit hijacking. Thanks.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I get very therapist focused, so.
That's fair.
So I think you can just keep going because I'm pretty sure this is.
Okay, yeah. So,
all you, Demi.
Iowa State Extension and Outreach is a research-based organization. And so if you don't know where to begin on all things mental health, this is a great resource to just kind of get started and to find what the next available programming is in your area. Additionally, if you come into there and you look under focus for mental health trainings, you'll find a couple in the human sciences section. So QPR, which is Question, Persuade, Refer, is a 1-hour presentation we've been offering virtually. And this program talks about how we would have a conversation with somebody who is experiencing a mental health crisis. So it's noticing some red flags, which are some of those signs and symptoms that Andrea shared at the very beginning, and being able to point those out to somebody and say, hey, I'm really concerned about you. And after we're listening non-judgmentally, if we find out that this is a suicide crisis, it would also help us navigate how to ask them directly about that suicide crisis, and then be ready to give resources and information and keep them safe until that crisis has passed. You'll also hear about mental health first aid in there, which is kind of what I just addressed a minute ago. This is an all-day program, and right now we have 2 focuses. So mental health first aid for folks who work with adults, as well as people who work with youth. And it talks about different really basic level diagnoses and symptoms of a wide range of mental health challenges and disorders. And it allows you to not diagnose, but to be able to recognize some things that are going on and intervene at appropriate levels based on how intense the situation is. So it walks you through seeing a crisis develop and what intervention would look like at a really early stage, maybe recommending self-care and maybe early professional help, all the way to a crisis, in which case you maybe have to deal with a medical crisis or a mental health crisis. I think at this point, does anyone have any questions?
As fast as my fingers could take me to make sure that I was matching up with the resources that you were talking about, while simultaneously like shaking my head like and getting some more laughs in as well. So we did have some questions come in, some comments. I also kept typed in some of mine as they came in. So we had some really good conversation right around when you were talking about like setting boundaries, and it kind of, one person was like, how do you say no? And you addressed that. And then it just kind of like spiraled from there in a good way, where we started seeing people saying, yes, I agree with that. Those suggestions for setting boundaries, but also if somebody's asking something of you that you can't give or can't commit to, that this was someone's suggestion, that they try to give an idea of someone else that potentially could benefit from that experience or opportunity. I thought that was a really proactive way. For some, especially if you have a hard time just flat out saying no, like maybe no, but so-and-so was looking for, something like that. And I thought,
that's great. I love that.
Super simple, but also could potentially, hook two new people up with an opportunity or a connection. And then we had a couple of people comment when you talked about being able to say no, and then just not having to go into every detail of, I can't because I'm doing this and this and this, and it's because of this and this. It's just, no, I'm just taking some time for myself. And that's enough. That's plenty. Yeah. So we had a couple of commenters that were like, that's a good one. I think that that potentially that line might have gotten written down in a few viewers' homes. You also talked about grocery pickup, that, and I really, that one resonated with me. I also, like this comment from Anne, I also didn't ever use this source until the pandemic hit. And it was one of those things of like, why aren't we all doing this? Why aren't we all doing this all the time? And even now, there's just times where like mentally, I live in a smaller community. So like, I don't get the anonymity of like going into a grocery store and not having small talk or not being seen in my, ratty sweatpants or whatever I chose to wear. So there's times that it's just mentally, like I can take that off my list. I don't have to like worry about what I have to look like or say to go into a grocery store to get like basic nutrition needs. Like, I don't have to worry about that. I can do that online. I can pick it up. Now, the next step is getting somebody to put all my stuff away. That would be a big help. Big help.
Yes, it would. And then cook it. If you could cook it for me too, that would be great.
Yes. So I think I have to have some level of fame or something. I'm not quite sure how to get them. But yeah, there was some really good comments around there. Did you have something you wanted to add, Demi?
Oh, I was just going to say, I used to be a fitness instructor, and if you've ever gone grocery shopping in a small town that you also teach fitness classes in, people are looking in that cart. It's Oreos.
What are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
Balance. Come on, guys. Oh, yes. So true. So we've got some other questions that we'll shift through. Some of them might just be things you touched on, and just get some reminders. So you talked a little bit about if a friend was seeking help, some ways that you can support that person. So what if you have been trying to help a friend? Like you've been maybe seeing some of those we talked about. You talked about physical or some of those symptoms that you might experience or might be noticing someone else. So you're trying to help that person and this person's just not accepting it.
Well, I mean, so at the end of the day, we still live in a place where adults get to make their own decisions, whether we agree with them or not. So the reality is there comes a point where you can't force somebody to get help. You can be loving, you can be supportive, you can maybe drop hints or reminders here and there. But if they are flat out like, I don't need that, I don't want to go to therapy, and they aren't a danger to themselves or anybody else, unfortunately, there's only so much you can do. And I encourage people, I'm like, I know it's hard and I know it's frustrating, but they need you in their life. If they're struggling, they still need you in their life. They need that love and support. So finding that balance of, I want you to get help and I want you to get better, but I don't want to push it so hard that that person ends up blocking you out. And making sure that you're monitoring your own sort of concern and frustration, because you don't want to get to a place where you're so frustrated that you block them out. Because if they're struggling, they still need that love and support. If you're concerned about somebody who is potentially a danger to themselves, talking about harming themselves, if it's not, you can always call your local police, sheriff, whatever, and have them do a welfare check on that person if you're concerned. You can, if it's not a family member, you can contact their family. We still like the ability to require hospitalization for somebody in Iowa is just not, I mean, it's hard to do. So, you know, there, unfortunately, it's a difficult situation, because the reality is if you're trying to help somebody and they don't want your help, we're limited on what we can do to get them that help. But you still want to take care of yourself in that situation and make sure that you are managing your own emotions and your own frustrations. There are, you know, you can call some of those resources, those hotlines, and just say, hey, here's a situation I'm in. I need some ideas. I need some help. I need to just talk about it. And you can certainly get help for yourself to make sure you're taking care of yourself that way too.
Yeah. Demi, do you have anything to add? I'll put I Will Concern up as one of those resources that you could reach out to.
No, I think she covered on all of it. I do recommend that if someone is going to call 911 in a crisis situation, if you have the opportunity to talk to the person that you are calling on behalf of, let them know what you're doing and what they can expect, and maybe even offer to be there during that, because at some point they might trace it back to you anyway, and you don't want to burn a bridge there or lose any trust. And then when you make that call, make sure that you are saying or asking for a crisis response team or a crisis trained officer. Yeah. Just so that they are getting the appropriate help and it's an appropriate conversation and response afterwards.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's good. Okay, so let's get to some other questions. And some of these are like one-liners that as you said it, I was like, oh, that's so good. Like, that's so good. So one was this: you don't always have to give an excuse. And that kind of goes back to the taking time for myself, or, I've seen it as like a quote where it says no is a full sentence. And I was like, it is.
It absolutely
sure is.
It absolutely is. And we don't, this goes against our Midwest nice that we're all raised with here in Iowa, but you don't actually owe anybody an explanation for why you can't do something or why you aren't available. Yeah. No is absolutely a complete sentence. That being said, it's also a very difficult sentence for a lot of us to say without feeling guilty or feeling like we, owe some further explanation. But you don't have to give an excuse. You don't owe anybody an excuse. And I think that's a good thing. As hard as it is, I encourage everybody to practice that from time to time, because it is, it's not being rude or mean or harsh to just say, no, I can't do that. It's not. And we as Midwesterners, particularly Iowans, need to get better about being able to say that. And we need to get better about being able to hear that without getting offended. Yeah.
I think I can probably say it easier than I could receive it. And that tells me that's on. And like, this is another one I wrote down, setting that boundary. And then it's not your responsibility on how the other person feels based off of that boundary. So yeah. And I do think some of it goes into our nature, who we are, but also how we've been brought up and, what that looks like. And I think that, feeling, like you could be, putting someone else in an awkward position, but at what cost? Like me overextending myself so that I'm, at an unhealthy place, physically, mentally, et cetera.
Right.
Or someone with maybe a little bit of some feelings that they need to work on.
Well, and another sort of saying or phrase that we kind of live by in my therapy practice office, because lawyers and DHS workers are notorious for asking things last minute. And so we don't necessarily say this, but we live by the thought that like your lack of planning does not constitute an emergency for me. Like, you asked for it late, I don't have time to get it done. That is not my fault. You knew this court date was coming up for months and you waited till the day before. And so I think remembering that if somebody else's poor planning has created a crisis for them, that is not yours to take on if you aren't able to do so or able to be helpful.
Yeah. I think so for community members watching, I think that's a popular quote among teachers as well. As we come to the end of the school year and students are out enjoying the sunshine or planning graduation events and not getting homework done or waiting until the last day of the semester to ask for extra credit.
Right.
Don't you worry about that teacher friend.
Nope. Stay strong. You're almost there, guys. You're almost there. All right. So we had a question come in. How do you support someone who posts about their mental health struggles on social media, but you're not necessarily close enough with that person where you feel like you can have that maybe meaningful interaction?
Sorry, that's a good one. I had to think about that for a second.
Stumped you.
I think there's lots of, so the closest of relationships gets a little blurry in social media land, right? Like we know a lot about people's lives, but we're not necessarily close to them. That being said, I still don't think there's, like, if you're connected with somebody on social media and they seem to be struggling, I don't think there's anything wrong with sending them a private message and just saying, hey, I've seen your post lately. It seems like you're really struggling. Can I offer, and just send them a link for a hotline or send them a link for, hey, maybe it's time to think about therapy. I know some great one, like, I'm a therapist. So when I see that, I'm like, if you need a therapist, I know like all of them in the Des Moines area. Let me know. We'll get you hooked up.
I got you.
And just kind of, I got you covered. So even if you don't feel like you're necessarily super close to that person, if they're posting it on social media, it's kind of out there for everybody to see. And so I think it's okay to reach out to them and say, hey, it seems like you're struggling. Can I, like, here's something here's a resource, or can I do something to help? Or have you thought about, you may not get a response. You may get an, I'm fine. But then you can at least say, I tried to help this person.
I want to point out, Andrea, that you mentioned in there, reaching out to them privately. So social media can be very public, making sure that you're not just adding to the comments thread. Or like a, Twitter thing, and making sure that you're giving them that space to open up, and you're not obviously adding that to the comments or something very public.
Social media definitely is a whole other, realm, but I do think that people are able to say things, or sharing a quote or something. Because I don't necessarily see people in my newsfeed that are full out putting stuff, but all of a sudden, if I've noticed one person is like continually sharing quotes or something that has kind of that emotional current undertone, it's like, oh, I might need to check in. And if it is a friend, it's maybe a text or even just like, hey, we haven't seen each other for a bit. Let's, sit on a patio. It's nice out. But that the ability to, kind of have some of those conversations behind a screen, sometimes that's incredibly negative on social medias. We can say things that we wouldn't say in person, but then there's other times that it's easier to have a difficult conversation through that text or, message or whatever. But doing it as privately as you can to respect each other is probably a good idea. I would agree. Okay, let's see. I have so many just like one-liners that I wrote down. I wish I could have got, every time I laughed, there was a really good one about washing pans. And it was like, well, let's be honest, when you need one. I thought, that's a good boundary. Keep pans just clean enough that you can use them.
Well, and I think that goes back to that sort of societal expectation on how you adult and what your house should look like. Yes. I mean, I grew up in a family who, like, my mom, we had a day of the week, we cleaned, everybody chipped in, we cleaned the house every week. Okay, my genetics are not built that way. That is not
skipped a generation.
I, made my bed every day as a child, and as soon as I moved into my own place, I was like, well, that's over. Because that stuff, it's, and let's be clear, like, there are usually dishes in my sink. That does not mean that my house is dirty. That does not mean that there's like mold growing. It means that making, like, the sink being empty does not bring me any joy or peace. So sometimes the dishes pile up because I'm doing things that bring me joy and peace. And that's okay,
Yeah.
It's okay to figure out what works for you
individually. And so,
absolutely.
Like, I love to say, for some people it's this, for other people it's that, and for you it might be a mix in between. And so I'm a clean house person. If my house gets messy, that brings me a lot of not joy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
What's that called? What's that called? Fear, anxiety.
There's a lot of work.
You know, I have friends who, like, when their house is clean, that's when they can relax and sort of have that peace, and that's what they need to do, and that works for them. And by all means, I have one friend, I joke with her all the time. She has 2 little kids and a husband at home, and I'm like, well, I mean, it's always quiet at my house, but it's probably going to make you twitty because it's not like, you know, there's dishes in the sink and there's stuff not picked up. And she's like, yeah. So it is, and that's the thing about it is my way isn't the right way for everybody. Demi's way is not the right way for everybody. You have permission to live your life in a way that works for you and not based on anybody else's expectations or pressures.
I'm going to just like clip that little line out and just loop that on repeat. That was really good. My husband and I, we have different things that cause us like raise an anxiety. So if I've been gone all day for work or whatever, and he's been home, and if the counter is piled, that is really hard for me to walk into. So he knows, like, that's one way he can really have me come back into the home and reduce, you know, some of the anxiety that could just like happen upon like entering. Whereas it's more for him. He doesn't actually care if the counter's like piled high, but if he's like tripping over shoes in the doorway or toys or things. So like we kind of have learned how to like share each other's things, you know, like how do I balance this for him, and that vice versa. And I've also had to like retrain my brain that if he's been home with the kids and I come home to, you know, dishes out or toys or whatever, I'm like, okay, does that mean that that the kids were fed and that they played? Like, yeah. So why would I allow that into my space as like an anxiety? Like it'll get cleaned. It'll be fine. Everybody's fed, had fun, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Speaking of kids, though, this was another one-liner, Andrea, that had me rolling. I've been told this. Our youngest, like, he's just never had a good sleep pattern. Like, I just like died because your comment was something like, I don't have kids, but I've been told that sleep deprivation is real. And I think everyone with a young one in their home, or maybe even a really energetic puppy, was like, it is very, very real.
I have two of my office mates are one of them has an 8-year-old and a 4-year-old, and the other one has 4-year-old twins. So
oh my goodness.
And we worked together I've worked with them since the 8-year-old was born. So I have vicariously lived through all of the sleep deprivations, all of the sleep regressions, all of the yes, everything.
And I think you said something, you know, that no matter what someone says, like, oh, I got 5 hours is enough for me. Like, that is not what research says. Research continues to tell us that you really need to be shooting for that. Was it 7 to 8 hours recommended for adults?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then you talked a lot about, this was my like summary of it, but training your brain for bed. I thought that was really, I am someone that like hops into bed to read or to watch a show or something like that. And it did hit me like, I've trained my brain that this means who knows what, like anything, sky's the limit. Anything can happen when you're here. And that I'm probably needing to retrain my brain for what that means. That was really powerful. So if someone's experiencing sleep issues, and you know, is there any thought or any, you know, guideline on like, if this is what you're experiencing, this is probably when you need to contact a doctor?
There's probably a lot of opinions out there on this. I think if you're having a couple of nights, I mean, it's normal for us to all have a night here and there where we just don't sleep very well. Like that's just kind of normal adulting. So if you've had a couple of days you don't sleep very well and then it kind of goes back to normal, I wouldn't worry too much about that. If you're going on a week to 10 days of like consistently not sleeping well, whether that's trouble getting to sleep, waking up early, waking up in the night, that's probably time to have a conversation about what we are going to do, whether that is with your doctor or, hey, maybe I'll try something like melatonin, which is natural. It's probably time to be like, okay, we're going on a solid week of not getting enough sleep. Like that's going to start being an issue. And absolutely talk to your doctor. Your doctor may say, hey, why don't you try melatonin before we sort of pull out the big guns of some of those other things. And that's assuming that's like a week to 10 days of having trouble sleeping, assuming that you're doing the other things we talked about, like you have some kind of a nighttime routine, you're not doing other things in your bed that could prevent you from sleeping. Assuming those other boxes are kind of checked and you're still having trouble sleeping, then it's probably time to talk to your doctor about it.
Yeah.
I think.
Oh, sorry, Demi.
We do some things with the military community too, and we feel this a lot post-deployment. And so also pay attention to behaviors with yourself or maybe your loved ones. If someone's drinking alcohol to try to fall asleep or to stay asleep, that might be worth a conversation about talking to their doctor about same thing, what's causing that need to use, a downer to get to sleep and stay asleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As you were talking about that it did remind me of previous live that we did with Dr. David Brown, who also is an extension specialist, behavioral health specialist, state specialist. And I think a similar question was asked, kind of going back to one of those first slides where we saw a lot of those physical and emotional things that could be happening when someone's experiencing large amounts of stress. The question was something along the lines of, how long are you experiencing some of these things before you seek professional help? And I think his answer was 2 weeks. And so that kind of aligns with if you're heading into that week, 10 days time frame, then, if you're experiencing these things, then this is time to make a phone call. And it could start with, I'll put Iowa Concern back up. It could start with a free Iowa Concern phone call. They're available 24/7. They have language interpretation available, and they're confidential and totally free. So this could be a place where if you're realizing some of the things we've talked about, or if you're experiencing just a little more than what you feel you can handle on your own, this is a really great place to go. They're going to have resources and support. Along that line, I have put in the comments quite a few other resources, one of which was the COVID Recovery Iowa link, which Andrea, this is your area. This is but there's many things behind your title, and this is one of them. But they have, I know, Iowa Concern is on this site, but you have a handful of other resources that are, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, they're free, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. So COVID Recovery Iowa is free to anyone who lives in the state. We have tons of projects and programs and opportunities to support. We have a Facebook page with tons of groups. Myself, Demi, and another one of our people have been doing Thursday sort of lunch and learn webinar things. We're doing them every other Thursday. We don't have one this Thursday, but we do have one next Thursday on a variety of topics. Having to do with mental health, depression, anxiety, grief and loss, loneliness and isolation. So there's COVID Recovery Iowa has a ton of stuff going on, and it is 100% free to anybody who lives in Iowa. So if you need anything, we are a great place to start right now.
Absolutely. All right. Well, I think we've reached the end of questions that have come in. Again, if you're watching this after the live has ended, you can still ask questions or send us a message. We'll connect you with Demi and or Andrea for more resources or answers to your questions. We're going to be focusing more this month on our social media pages and many of our extension offices. All 99 counties have offices. One county has 2 offices. So we've got 100 extension and outreach offices throughout Iowa. And all of them have connections to the resources or the trainings or these different opportunities. So you can reach out to someone local if that feels more natural. Like I said, you can comment here. Demi and Andrea also have emails that you can send them. They can point you to more information from there. Here's a few other pages to follow. If you aren't already following us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, here's our handles. And then also COVID Recovery Iowa is on those platforms as well that you can follow along, see the resources that they're sharing. Demi and Andrea, thank you so much for joining us. We did end up going a little over the hour, but there's just too much good stuff to talk about. Anything you want to leave viewers with?
I think just
thank you for listening to me ramble and we're talking at the same time. I was just going to say thank you for listening to me ramble and take care of yourselves. We did it again. Demi,
I know,
it's all
I'm just
you.
giggling.
When we talk about mental health awareness, it's not just being aware that it exists, but aware that recovery is possible and likely, and that connecting people to the right resources is really that key step to allowing them to recover and to live a happy, healthy life.
So good. Perfect way to end.
Absolutely.
Thank you all. Have a happy Tuesday. And again, leave any comments or questions, and we will make sure that we connect with you. Have a good day.